So thanks for coming along to the presentation today, the workshop. I hope it's a bit of a workshop. So my name is Janine McNair and I'm a lecturer and a tutor and a PhD researcher as well. So my contact with BALEAP started in 2018 and I've done the fellowship with BALEAP and also attended many workshops and spoken at the 2021 conference as well. My working life in education is pretty extensive, with some years in the secondary state school system in Spain and also as a lecturer in the University of Extremadura in Spain, and then latterly as a lecturer at the City of Glasgow College in Glasgow. That's ESOL. And during the summer, since 2018, I've been working as a tutor on the pre-sessional courses at the University of Glasgow, which you can see in that photo. My research has been focused on bilingualism. That was in the master's degrees that I did. Child's bilingual development, or a bilingual child's development in language, and also code switching among speakers in the bilingual community. So they were both about spoken interaction, which really ties into my PhD project. I've always had a passion for spoken interaction. I've always wondered what's going on when my students are speaking together, whether they're children, teenagers, or now in EAP or ESOL. So the working title for this session is Enhancing Student-to-Student Spoken Interaction to Impact Collective Knowledge Construction. I would like to just clarify from the outset that when I say spoken interaction, I'm actually referring to the type of interaction that students do when they do a task together. Any task, even that goes through all ages and all types of education. The type of thing we do every day when you say, okay, get together in pairs or threes and answer exercise 1 together and try and speak as much as you can when you're doing it. Well, that's what this is about, really. What happens when they're actually discussing a task together? How do they interact together? There's a theory which goes back to Gunnar Wardena, and many others have researched on it since, about knowledge being constructed as people are speaking. So they need to actually go through this process, and that helps them construct their knowledge. So that's what I'm very much interested in. And I've also put these 3 headings there because they've really inspired my study and my ongoing work. The idea that if students get more effective at their spoken collaboration, their spoken interaction, they will therefore be more autonomous, they'll have more power. So learner agency, and that feeds into collaborative learning, which I think we're all interested in. And also the third point there about a process, well, it ties into the talk I went into earlier. I'm much more interested, as many researchers in people education are nowadays, on the process, what's happening when they're actually doing it, because in the belief that they're learning as they do it. So we're not looking at results and outcomes, although they are important, it's not the emphasis here. I hope that today you're going to participate, or you're going to be asked to participate, and also maybe take away some points that you can feed back into your own classrooms. This is the structure of the session today. Just a brief background and your practical task, I hope, second thing. And then the theory will be very briefly selected, and the summary of the project, that's the methodology, also very brief. However, there will be time at the end in the Q&A if you want to question or find out more about any of those issues. That's perfectly great. And the final part there is where I hope we will come together and think about how we might implement some of the ideas, the final section of the session. So the PhD has really totally come out of my working life. Because of my working life, I wished to do a study that related to that. As a very mature student, it would not be practical for me to do something that was totally unrelated and come home at night and sit down with textbooks about whatever, poetry or whatever, no. So I don't regret that for a minute, because actually I've learned so much from it, but also when I'm teaching, I'm able to think about what I'm studying in my own theory and my own literature review, for example, and I'm able to look at my students with slightly different angles and think a bit more about what's happening there. At the same time, my students' work has helped me because I've used some of the spoken interaction for my data analysis. I collected that data in 2021 from students on the pre-sessional course at the University of Glasgow. And I've discovered a lot of theory. So I've got a reading list of about 300 now, and a lot of that's about learning theory, as well as spoken interaction and research methodology. The validity of this study is really because, one of the reasons is because we're usually teaching large groups, and we have to break them down into smaller groups, teams. So nowadays, I think we all probably know this, that the students are looking to go forward with their team skills, and in fact it's considered an important 21st century skill, not just in study but in work. And the second part there is really like about what I'm doing now, hopefully sharing my own learning and my own progress in my understanding of spoken interaction, share that with others in a forum such as the one we're in right now. The third point there is online delivery. The study did originate during the COVID lockdown 2020. So my work at that time, my data collection was done in the online context. And so there are certain aspects of that come in, and it seemed relevant to me to put that in my working title of my PhD. However, I would like to say that a lot of the theory about spoken interaction, and what we're going to see in a moment, is it's actually relevant to both face-to-face or online. I mean, there might be certain things that will apply more to online, but my study is more about how people connect to each other when they're speaking. So we're going to go on now to a short task, which I'd like you to do together in groups of three or four. And I'd like you just to sit in groups of 3 or 4 and answer the questions on the Mentimeter. So one person, please open Mentimeter on that address on your telephone, perhaps, if you can, and put in that code. And there's a short task. Now, each question, there are 3, and each question requires about 75 seconds maximum for you to discuss and put the answer in. Okay. You don't need any paper or anything for this, just group together. So do you want to go ahead, please? 4 is all right. You know, if 3 doesn't work out, just make it 4. Are you ready? Okay, let's go then. So I'm not really giving you any instructions other than just talk together about the answer, possible answer, and see what happens, really. So there's a group there, group here, and all right. Okay, there you go. First question. There are just 3 questions, remember, so.
But another thing I do is, I mean, you could argue that the tree grows, develops,
It's almost time to put your answers in, you know, if you want to manage that. You've just got 5 seconds. You need to decide. Right, it looks like most of you actually chose the right answer, but we're not so much interested in outcomes, it's more about how you talk about it, remember. Okay, second question.
In that context, I guess we break it up because they go into each other, developing ideas. Well, it goes into one main goal, doesn't it? Developing ideas for me. You do, yeah.
Okay.
You pick, yeah.
Just a few seconds left. Oh, everyone's voted, right, so I think we'll see the recommended answer, but as I say, it's not the important thing. But yeah. Right, and there's one more.
Okay, so this is probably developing ideas because you've got pizza and the same thing. You've got different slices.
But I'm also into structure, right? It's just like
Could be
sections, structure that represents things.
To create the structure.
different parts of the same structure.
Same structure, yeah.
It's not well structured.
But it's true, I think you're right though. For me,
Because even though they're all distinct different pieces,
Yeah.
come together in a structure.
to create
that makes it
the final piece.
This reminds me of brainstorming.
Oh, everyone has voted. You're very fast. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing though, because you're supposed to be having a lot of discussion.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it really
Okay, yes, and it seems that you got it correct. That one. I think everybody got that one correct. Right. So I'm not really going to go into the reasons why the answers were the answers. That wasn't the point in it. I hope you understand that. And of course, for our students, it would be a bit more challenging and meaningful, perhaps, than that particular task was for yourselves. So, based on what you've just done, I'd like you to reflect a little bit and think about these 3 points here: was the balance and the talking, any changes in views by talking to each other, and any possible increased understanding. So I was going to give you pieces of paper. I don't have large pieces of paper, but we've got so little time anyway. So I think it's maybe best if you just keep it in your head and maybe retain it though to give a little bit of feedback during the Q&A.
Okay.
That works.
Yeah, perfect.
So I'm giving you about 4 minutes to talk about these points here, just about 4 minutes each group.
I think for me,
I guess if it was a bigger group, it was more, you know, it would have changed more, gone back and forth more.
And I think vice versa for the first one.
Yeah.
I could just see
Yeah.
I cannot see anything else.
Because
Yeah.
if we think about balances in just change views, visual comments.
Yeah.
And then with
I guess
yeah, and then sort of reflect a bit more.
understanding.
balance.
For us, we were arguing all 3 points, but yes.
So you have a picture of it.
Well, I did. But I didn't say it, yeah. Yeah. But it's very reflective of you to notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there could maybe a bit more. Something that maybe there isn't one answer, like she said, so there could be ways of interpreting. I think
So it's kind of the whole thing.
all of them.
Yes,
Maybe written discussion for anything else. I really encourage my classrooms, not just one answer.
Yeah, I guess thinking about your own subjective
I guess I like to treat that things can go in any direction, kind of thing.
trying to justify why that's the reason or is reason.
Just one more minute to reflect together, okay? One more minute.
But it's connected to how things work and
Something symbolic into it. And whenever I read poetry, sometimes
I really change. I think it's still
not more abstract thinking.
Okay, right. That's
yes and no, not the first one. The second one, I think it could have gone either way. Contrasting. I think it could be either breaking down or it could
Yeah.
So I think that could be
That's what I immediately that's what I thought.
I did and that it could go there. Yeah, we need to go to one.
The opposite, going the other way around because I saw it going like this rather than going opposite.
I'm going to draw the reflection to a close for the moment, but please try and remember something you've said to feed back to the whole group later. All right, so we're moving on now to the theory. As I said, it had to be brief. So one of the core points, or actually the core point in my study is transactivity. And this word actually came from Dewey's work in 1950. But many researchers in the last few years, especially in the field of CSCL, computer-supported collaborative learning, many of them have used this idea in their work because some of them have been developing digital tools and they're trying to see, first of all, how people interact in order to get their digital tools to reflect that and address that and help students interact more in a more digitally based classroom. However, my work is not at CSCL, it's EAP and it's what you're doing as well probably. So transactivity, as Jerry Stahl defined in 2006, it's a combination of being explicit and also referring to others or operating on, I like that phrase, operating on others' points, picking up on what other people say and coming back to it. Now you might not do that in a linear way, it might come back like a lot later in the discussion or it could come back at a different point, but that's transactivity. Yes, and reasoning is another word which I must just call out for a moment in blue there. So of course we're talking about reasoning because we're talking about classroom interaction learning. So you could study transactivity in cafe conversations or social conversation, but this is actually about learning. So learning is effectively reasoning if students are doing a task together. Now a little bit about the methodology and the actual data and the data analysis. So I'm currently on the data analysis. The data analysis is not complete. So what I'm going to tell you about just now is the data collection and the task and the methodology that I'm applying to be able to study that data. And I'm going to show you a little sample of the data that I have analysed. So the task was a true or false statement task. It was a task asking the students to define the writing a summary paragraph of an academic article. So the idea is the students have been on the course for a few weeks and they've done some work on summarising, and now they're trying to write paragraphs summarising articles. So this is a true or false statement task. 9 statements about what to do in that. The task was recorded, and there was also some self-reporting data, but it wasn't the main part of the data collection. The main data set is the natural spoken interaction that occurred during that task. This is a little sample. So this task was from the curriculum in the University of Glasgow pre-sessional 2020, and we've used it since then. One or two of you might even recognise it. I've just taken a sample of it here. There were 9 statements, these are 3. And I used that task as well deliberately because it wanted something tangible as well, that the students could quite easily have to reach a consensus, something that they could understand, but also because it was just part of the course. So it would have happened anyway, whether I was collecting the data or not. It's not a design-based research at all. And conversation analysis, which is my methodological approach, really follows that line. Conversation analysis is all about collecting natural conversation or interaction. And although the classroom, you might say it's not natural, well, it wasn't guided in any other way except for answer those questions and discuss it. And so the methodology, conversation analysis, there's many reasons why I chose that. I mean, I could talk about that for 20 minutes, but I'll just emphasise maybe Sachs' quote, which was that this was published after his death, but understanding. So because as educators we're interested in learning, so I want to know how the students are building their understanding. And at first I didn't know what approach I was going to use. I mean, I studied all different possibilities, interaction analysis, content analysis, many different ones. And I eventually came to the conclusion this was the one. This was the one for me for many reasons. But that's one of the main reasons that I really like the idea that conversation analysis can help me, it can help reveal information about the data, which otherwise I might not be able to figure out. Conversation analysis, a lot of it's about sequencing, and it's about turn taking and how people respond to each other. And so I thought that was pretty much ideal for the study of transactivity. I've transcribed all my data, and I've followed Jeffersonian transcription practice, so that's the key conversation analysis style. It's very detailed, like it also represents upward shifts and down, so prosody is represented as well as linguistic features and turn taking and so on. So I think that's useful. Now here's a little example of my data. So one of the first things I did after transcribing was use a colour coding system to try to really get a grasp of the data myself. So I used green for explicitness, and I used blue for operating on, and I used red for like key pivotal moments, if you like, of understanding something that might represent this. This is a little bit tentative. This is not my final data analysis. As I said, I'm still doing that now anyway, but this was actually like a preliminary stage where I was trying to get more familiar with the data. The pink there is causal phrases, so linguistic features, and those are some of the linguistic features I'm looking for. I'm looking for causal phrases which help reason, saying so, because, due to, or for this reason. So I think, and then the yellow I think was more about moving forward, and I wrote this down the other day just to remind myself about this. I think the yellow, the yellow. I thought I had written it. I don't see it now, but it doesn't matter. But the yellow was about reaching conclusions, I think, and actually building the knowledge, like something that they have to do, something they have to move on, progress really in a way. So that's the colour coding, and later I'd like you to discuss a little bit, based on your reflection as well, how can we get our own students to develop each other's ideas? Is there anything we can do to actually encourage them to pick up on each other and be more explicit. So these are a few points that I've tried to do, and as I've gone on, I've only been in EAP for a few years, and I think that these things, and it's not just my idea, some of this is based on Mercer, who's done a lot of work on exploratory talk and also learning together. There's a whole programme called Learning Together, and it's really all about interaction. So the first two are just logistics ones that we all do all the time, you know, where they're going to sit, is it cold, is the window open, all of that. Second one is about the group sizes, maybe dynamics. We often think which students to put together or if we should do that at all. And I didn't do that in the data analysis. I didn't put them together in any deliberate way, just whatever happened. And then the next ones are really from Mercer and also based on my own experience, but about participation. So they actually have to be doing this, because I think sometimes we put them into groups and leave them, but maybe they're not really actually participating very much. Maybe some of them are not saying very much, or maybe we're not doing it regularly enough. So I think routine and regularity, the fourth point there, are really important to make this a normal. I want to make it a normal thing in my classrooms, that students are talking about things openly and they're not afraid to do that. I'm not looking at what's right or wrong. And I'm going to try and train them not to look for what's right and wrong either. Obviously, if there's a specific task, then it's going to motivate them more. And I think tasks with consensus goals are quite good as well, like the one that you did earlier in the Mentimeter. And of course, the task should be relevant. It should be meaningful to them. It's something that's complementing what they've already been doing. That's the penultimate one. I also feel that I think sometimes we are reluctant to speak. I mean, many of us trained in, you know, TEFL, and it was all about don't speak, the teacher's not to speak, and all. I mean, that was what it was like many years ago, 20 odd years ago. But I think that our students do see us as a model, and you know, we are like their first port of call, if you like, with the academic world, and you know, they want to use somebody to try and pick up on us, to try to learn maybe our strategies. So I think it's not a bad idea to take part, not in every task by any means, not at all, but maybe the first few days, you know, of the course, and then of course a little bit every day of normalising a conversation. Those are the references that are in the presentation, and if anybody wants to, if you want to take a photo, that's fine. I'll leave it on for a moment. So we'll come back to your points in a minute, because I think what happens now is we've kind of gone on to the discussion part of the session. So any questions from you, I'm most happy to try and answer. Thanks for your participation, but I'd also like you to tell me about what you did before. So maybe we can begin with the questions, if you've got any questions. If you don't have any right now, you can always ask me later or even send an email.